Well, another week of the A-League Women is done and dusted with a couple of surprise results, some heat-impacted fixtures, and perhaps the least surprising yellow card of all time, resulting in yet another suspension for a particular player. But at least it wasn't a red card this time. While elsewhere, we have Matilda's coaches. It's a miracle. This country can actually hire coaches as Alex Parkes and Michael Cooper take on the young and junior Matildas roles respectively. The NPL is back, and we look ahead to round 19 of the A-League Women on this episode of the Dubcast, part of the Round Ball Australia podcast network. My name is Poletti, and Burke, do you have any conspiracy theories for us this week?
Well, if I've not off the top of my head, but as we go through, I'm sure something will manifest within me. I can feel it. It'll happen.
Christian, I don't think you've been around for an episode yet where we've delved down the tunnel of Burke's conspiracy theories. Do you have a conspiracy theory for us as well, or?
It's a good thing that I've been away for a couple of weeks, so I don't have to delve into the conspiracies. I'm not too much for the conspiracy theories. No, I don't have one at the top of my head, but if one springs to mind, I'll definitely let you both know, that's for sure.
Well, as always, we start with our big storyline. Burke, the floor is yours.
My big storyline is probably Perth's massive win over Western United because that's kind of given them, I guess, the slimmest possibility of potential of making finals.
Yeah, it was certainly a good performance by Perth on Friday night. The late show on Friday night, the only A-League Women game as well. So it was a standalone in the 10 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time time slot, 7 p.m. local time, which I think has best been summed up by reporter for the West, Ben Smith. Perth Glory's dub finals hopes were rushed to a nearby hospital where they were pronounced dead. They were then transferred to a better hospital where Kelly Brown upgraded their condition to alive in what has absolutely been one of my favourite A-League women's crossovers this season. Kelly Brown opened the scoring in the 14th minute and then completed her brace in the 81st minute, which would be her final action of the contest. Susan Fonksonkham returned from injury, scoring an 86th minute penalty. For me, when I looked at the first Kelly Brown goal, my immediate thought was what could have been this season for the Glory. It was a well-taken goal. Kelly Brown went down with injury rather early in the season. Has only come back in the last few weeks. I believe these were her fourth and fifth goals of the season. And the reason I went to that is because when we talked in our season preview, Stephen Peters was very glowing in his praise of Kelly Brown as a reason that she went over to Western Australia. The two have, a very close working relationship together. Peters basically, with his first A-League job, entrusted Kelly Brown to basically give her the keys to the attack. And unfortunately, she got injured. But with the way that she's been scoring, the way that she's been working things back, you can't help but think what could have been for the Glory if not only she was fit, but Susan Fonksonkham was fit from the start as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed her second goal. After she scored it, she ran all the way back to the bench to celebrate with the physio, who I'm sure she now has a very close relationship with after all the time spent injured and yeah, on the bench, I should say. Sorry. The return of Susan Fonksonkham also huge. She made an immediate impact. She was the reason, I guess, that they got was it the penalty because of her? Because she made the play that Julia Sato then got red carded for.
No, I believe those were two separate incidents
Were
off the
they?
top of my head. Yes.
Then they happened minutes apart, I think.
Yes. Yes, no, they
Okay.
were very close together, yes.
But yeah, Fonz and Cam coming back, making things happen. Yeah, I definitely do feel for Perth because they've been done so dirty by injuries this season. I think it'd be a really good sort of like underdog story to see them make finals. I'm not sure if they will, but yeah, I think Yeah, it was an incredible performance for them. Western United looked very flat. They had shots, but nothing seemed to want to go in for them. And Casey Dumont was having, well, an usual day for her, which is a very good day. Um, so yeah, unfortunate for Western United, but it's not looking so good over there, I'd say.
No, it certainly isn't. And of course, Kelly Brown did go down with an injury concern in this game as well, which probably half led to the celebration with the physio as well. That no, no, you got me back after my second goal. That one's for you, Christian. On the Western United side of things, Julia Sardo picks up a red card in this game for dog. So just as Burke said, they looked incredibly flat. It's not looking good in Tane. They've had chances in recent weeks to seal their spot inside the finals race. The Glory are one of those sides in the chasing pack who are now being given a chance to catch up. In part, not just because of Western, but all the other sides in and around that top six race just seemingly don't want to steal their final spots because none of them are winning games. But honestly, this has to fill Cat Smith with some concern that you know they've got a chance to all but seal a spot in the finals, and they put out such a lifeless performance.
Probably brings us similar vibes to last season where they started to go on a bit of a losing run towards the back end of the season, went into finals on poor form and got knocked out to Newcastle. But in that instance, they lost a few key players, right? I think Chloe Lagaza was one of them. You can't really say that this season. I think it's just a case of poor performances, right? I mean, they've lost 3 of the last 5 matches. So, yeah, from that point of view, it is pretty concerning if I was a West United fan. Um, yeah, because to be honest, they just inflict pain on themselves at their own accord. I mean, there were moments throughout where they just let Perth have the ascendancy, and sure enough, they were punished with an early goal, losing the ball in the middle of the park. I think it was Amy Elise Medwin. It didn't come to the ball, didn't present, and like you were taught that at junior level, right? I mean, that's just the basic stuff, and she had no desire to track back whatsoever, which I thought was really glaring. So for a Cat Smith side, for players not to track back and defend, like that would cut her, like that would make her absolutely filthy and angry. So I think definitely there should be a couple of changes coming in their next match against Canberra. I think it's Friday night. So I mean, yeah, as for Julia Sordo's red card, I believe she received a 1 match suspension today by the match review panel, which I was shocked. I thought it was probably worthy of 2 games, maybe even 3. Like, that was such a bad tackle from behind. I don't know about the both you and your thoughts, but obviously do not have a clear goal scoring opportunity. It's a straight red card every day of the week. But in terms of the actual challenge, I thought it was pretty reckless and dangerous. And yeah, she's very lucky that it's only 1 game. So I think Western can count themselves fortunate there. But away from home with that one player less advantage, it was always going to be a mountain to climb, right? In Perth, and from there, Glory would just put the foot on the gas, got those extra couple of goals to seal it. And yeah, I mean, they're only 2 points clear of 7th of Canberra now with a few games to go. I mean, it's not guaranteed, is it, that they make finals?
No, it certainly isn't. Perth Glory are up against the Mariners next on Friday night, and Western United against Canberra, Christian, as you said. Come back to Perth for a second, Burke. Their run home, Mariners away, Western Sydney at home, Canberra at home, Sydney away, Melbourne City at home to close out the season on the final day. They're 6 points back of the final spots. With the way that the Mariners, Canberra, Western Sydney have been performing this season, and then taking to the fact that the Mariners and Canberra are 2 sides directly above them on the ladder, competing for those same spots, like a couple of big 6 pointers coming up in the next couple of weeks. Could they do it?
There's definitely like there's definitely potential for it, especially I think with the way Central Coast haven't been, taking advantage of their, work and effort and coaching really. Western Sydney is definitely like they're all except the game against City, they're all definite possible options for Perth to pick up points from. And I don't just mean draws. Like I mean they could definitely win some, if not all of these games if they really, really knuckled down and fought for it. So yeah, they could. They could. We've all been, people have been talking too much about how Sydney are going to make a late judge for finals, and really it's been Perth this whole time.
Well, I mean, I don't think us on this podcast have been
Oh
talking about
no,
Sydney making a late finals run. We,
no,
we, we've
never.
been we've been non-believers basically this entire season in Sydney FC, which it is what it is. We both wrote them off incredibly early. I mean, to be fair, Burke, you wrote them off before the start of the season because it is
Exactly.
Sydney FC.
If there's one thing
Christian,
I will be doing, it's hating.
Christian, I'll pose the same question to you. Can the Glory make finals from here?
Um, 6 points off. Oh, it's going to be tough. I mean, let me just have a quick glance at the fixtures because obviously that's important with only like what 4 or 5 games to go. They've got Mariners, Wanderers, Canberra, Sydney, and Melbourne City. I mean, those last two, Sydney and City. They might have a chance to City with the title already wrapped up, presumably. Sydney, they'll be out of finals contention, you'd think, by that point. So there could be a couple of openings there, but yeah, they've made it tough for themselves, haven't they? It's just a shame that they didn't pick up this same sort of form at the start of the season, what we know they're capable of, right? So might be a stretch too far, but never say never. I mean, that mid-table pack's sort of dropping points left, right, and centre, aren't they? It's sort of like the men's competition where no one wants to win. They're just letting Auckland just stroll away with the league. It's like Melbourne City in this instance, although Victory have caught up a bit. So if I had to probably, tip, I'd say no, only just. I do think they'll make it close, though.
Well, it certainly wouldn't be the first time in recent years that the Glory have missed out on the final day of the season, either by a point or goal difference. But that's why the games are played. It's not done on paper; it's played on grass.
It'd be boring otherwise.
It would be very boring indeed. But they're getting some of their players back at the right time, and maybe, just maybe, they can make things interesting. Christian, what is your big storyline from the last week?
To be honest, Burke stole mine with the Western United game. I was going to say West United being a disappointment, which was the main storyline, but I'll go with something different, just for the sake of the pod. I'll go for Victory's win against Canberra. So I think this is a real statement win because if we're talking about, if you had to pick two grand finalists as of this moment, you'd probably say it's a Melbourne derby in terms of form and potential, right? I mean, Adelaide's been in and about. They've performed really well above expectations, but can you really say that they're going to be, in their seasons and will they make the grand final? I've still got a couple of question marks in terms of whether they can. But in terms of victory, they just know how to win, right? I mean, it got to the 70th minute mark, 0-0. It wasn't though they were struggling. I mean, they were dominating possession and they had a few good chances, but didn't keep their heads down, kept pushing, and eventually that Canberra defence cracked, right? I mean, that Gilnick, the second goal, gets 10th goal of the season now, into double digits, top goal scorer. They've just got weapons all over the place. And I just think if you had to pick one team who can really threaten Melbourne City in a grand final, it would have to be Victory. I mean, Jeff Hopkins with his experience, they really are frightening when they're on. It's just been a few games this season where they haven't been, and that's where the questions have sort of been raised as to can they compete with the Melbourne City. But besides Victory, I mean, who else would you say can compete with City at the moment? I'd say Victory. So I think this performance against a Canberra side who can be extremely dangerous when they want to be, I thought it was really impressive. So that was probably my takeaway.
Yeah, Holly Furphy and Emily Gilnick on the score sheet for this one. Very acute angle on the goal for Holly Furphy, nutmegging Sally James. But Gilnick a lot more traditional, headed from a corner. For me, in this game, why the 5 p.m. kickoff? Why, Burke? Why? It was way too hot in Melbourne on Sunday. The
Why?
venue has
Because
adequate
they
lighting
hate
for
us.
broadcast. I don't know. It's infuriating.
They just don't. They don't like us and they don't care. Um, I found it very interesting though this week because the Adelaide men's game was played before the Adelaide women's game. So it was an earlier again kickoff time, I want to say. Um, and
And
after that
they had two
game,
drinks breaks per
yeah,
half, didn't they, the men's?
yeah.
Yeah.
But after that game, there was all of a sudden all of this commentary and articles being published about how it wasn't a good show of football. and it was really heat affected, and I'm just sitting here like, oh really? Really, playing the games really early means it's bad football? I've never heard of that happening before. That's so crazy. Can't believe they would do that to poor men and make them run around in the heat like that. Um, so that was really the first thing I thought of when I saw the that the men's game had to be played earlier in the heat. Just found it a little bit amusing. Why it was played at 5 p.m. when they were at home of the Matildas, I'm
Yes,
guessing.
yes.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you. It's not like there was a second game being played afterwards at home of the Matildas. There was really no need.
No, delay
Two
the game an hour.
hours,
Delay it 2 hours. Like, just
and an hour, 2 hours would have made this game completely different.
I I don't get it. We've already seen a game at this venue pushed back to a later kickoff. Earlier this season, Wanderers and Victory was moved from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And resulted in an 8-goal thriller, if memory serves me correctly. So, crazy that playing games in suitable conditions results in good quality football. Who'd have thought? Um, Christian touched on it a little bit earlier, Burke. Melbourne Victory now just a 2 point gap to Melbourne City. Both sides level on games played. Their catch up game with each other is obviously a little bit, different in terms of when things get played. Um, but, 2 points back. Could Victory get past City?
I don't see why not. I mean, who have they got next? They play Western Sydney next week. That's 3 points. They play Newcastle Jets the week after. That's probably 3 points. They play Adelaide United in round 21. That'll probably be a big game for Victory, considering the form that Adelaide's been in. And if Adelaide bring well, their first team and play the way that they've been playing currently, that could be, I think, who else have they got? They've got Central Coast and then they've got Brisbane. I think that game against Adelaide is going to be the real tricky point for them if Adelaide decide to show up, which I think they will. But yeah, otherwise I don't see why not, especially if City kind of pull their focus, I guess, to look towards the Women's Asian Cup, because that is in 2 weeks' time. No, next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, next weekend.
Yeah, so this weekend, Melbourne City play Adelaide, and then it is Champions League fixture the weekend after, which will see Melbourne Victory go ahead on games played. Their catch-up game against the Brisbane Roar, which was postponed because of ex-tropical cyclone Alfred, takes place, was announced today, day of recording Tuesday, for Wednesday, March 26th at Perry Park. So, by the time the international break rolls around, both both sides will once again be level on games played, and really gives us a better idea of where we're going to be come the last couple of weeks of the season. But yeah, Christian, both sides, City and Victory, still have to play Adelaide United. Asked Burke about this last week. Adelaide could be the ones to decide the title, and they're in third place, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, just before the season started, I can't forget that I have them 11th or I might have had them in last place to either them or Canberra. So for them to be third, like, just unbelievable. The way they've performed, the consistency they've shown, the character is just a complete flip right from last season where they were getting smashed and they conceded 8 goals in one game against the Jets at the latter end of the season. And they are to just, completely make that U-turn has been incredible. Another 1-0 result, positive result over the weekend. They're looking good. I think, look, in terms of finals experience once they get there, because they obviously will, that's the only sort of question mark I have about this team when they play against the likes of a Victory and a City. But besides that, I mean, in terms of the talent on the pitch and the football they're producing, I definitely think they can really make a big push. And as you said, they've still got City and Victory to come in the regular season. So again, that's going to be a real test to see where they're at, right, coming into finals, because everyone says it. This is the most important stretch where you have to find your best form and to test yourselves against the two best teams in the competition, arguably. I think it's going to set a real benchmark. So I'm definitely looking out for those two matches in particular to see where they actually sit at this current moment, and see if they can continue their form.
Yeah, it makes for an interesting last few weeks of the season indeed. I'm going to hold on my big storyline for a moment because I feel like it gives us a good chance here to just move into Adelaide 1, Central Coast Mariners nil. Aaron Healy with the goal in the 50th minute. Sheehan Evans picked up a second yellow card in the 61st. It was a good tackle, just, the follow through was what did the yellow card. We already touched on it. It was very hot in Adelaide on Saturday. The men's game was played in over 36-degree heat. Um, we talked about this. We talked about this last night a little bit on the predictions game that we do for here at Ramble Australia. Um, mentioned on A League Off Air that a couple of Brisbane Roar men's players were given like thermometer pills or something like that prior to the men's game to measure their core body temperature. And some of the men's players got up to, I believe it was 39.1 degrees internal body temperature during this game. As I said in the predictions game, I'm no scientist, but I believe when your body temperature gets that high, you got to stay home from school as a kid. So, not good conditions to be playing football in. As you said, Burke, all the articles started to come out afterwards. Our very own Jacob Stevens wrote one for the Ramble Australia website with Carl Vietz and Bart Vreen's post-match reaction. If only there was a competition that had been greatly impacted by this throughout its history, with games being played at poor times in sweltering heat that might have stopped the competition from growing earlier.
If only. I wouldn't know about that though. Personally, I have no experience with such a league. I've never seen such a thing happen before, because that would be inhumane, wouldn't it?
It would be. And yet somehow it's seemingly happened at least 3 or 4 times a season in the A-League Women throughout its history. Just not good. And it certainly didn't help the crowd in this one either. A double header. You've already got fans who are making, they're already at the ground, yes, but people don't want to sit through 5 hours of football at the best of times, let alone when the first game of that, slate is in 36 plus degree heat. Like that's not good for anyone to sit through that. So I certainly wouldn't have blamed anyone for leaving after having sat through the men's game. It's caused a discussion on social media. Like I've sat in press boxes at games with air conditioning, and I've sat there and it's just like, this is too hot here in an air conditioned press box. I can't even imagine what it's like outside. Like the setup at Campbelltown Stadium, for example, you've got the press box, but then if you want to access anything, it's sort of like it's very much an open air sort of walkway, and so the second you leave the press box, you just get walloped with a wall of heat on a hot day, and like that's tough enough to deal with. So I couldn't even imagine playing football in it. But maybe this might result in some changes, and hopefully trying to find a positive here. If it means that it's happened to the men one too many times and actually creates a discussion that maybe we can build something off, then, it sucks that it has to happen to men before these sorts of things are actually taken seriously. But if it means positive changes overall, then yay. Question mark?
You have to take it, wouldn't you?
Unfortunately, yeah.
But back to the game itself. As I said, 1-0 Adelaide. Burke, should Jess Nash have been awarded the penalty in stoppage time, or was this just a case of a player that was already falling down, trying to get backwards to the ball, and she was sort of helped to the ground by the Adelaide defender?
I was just watching the highlights to see it again. I don't think it was a foul. And I will say nothing more.
Christian?
I'm probably the same opinion as Burke. Would have been probably a bit harsh to give that. So yeah, I'm with the opinion of Burke. But it could probably, if it was given, I probably wouldn't even have any complaints, to be honest. It's one of those 50-50s. Obviously, you don't have VAR in the comp, so at least you don't have to go through the debate, the ref going to the monitor and then having this whole other argument. So, let's probably just keep VAR to the side. But no, I probably wouldn't have given it if I saw it at first glance.
If you're playing along with a drinking game at home, Christian mentions VAR, take a shot. No, don't. You'll die before the end of the episode. Look, I think it was just a case of a player falling down. And I know I sort of wrote and asked it in a very much a leading question sort of way. But I just think this was a case of, player
Because you wanted some
falling
controversy, that's why.
Always want controversy. It makes for great social clips. If you look at Adelaide, as I said, Burke, they're 4 points back of the top two. They can really sort of dictate the title pace given that they play both of them. I know this has been a discussion on other podcasts in recent weeks as well, but do we have to sort of start taking Adelaide seriously as title contenders, or is it wait until the finals roll around before we actually believe it?
I think we have to take them seriously as a threat. But I don't know. They've been kind of quietly good, like consistently throughout the whole season, and have just started getting, I guess, quite loud about it in recent weeks. And I think it's really good for them considering how historically not good they have been. So for them to kind of pull up like this has been actually really great to see. And it's definitely exciting to see that a team that's from, not a huge city doing really well in the league. So,
Christian, same question to you.
I probably have nothing else to add, to be honest. Burke said everything. I'm probably in the agreement there. Nothing much else to add, to be honest.
Well, Christian, on the Mariners side of things, and I know we sort of touched on it in the post-glory discussion, but, this is another game dropped for the Mariners. They're barely hanging on to a spot in the top six, in part because all the other sides around them haven't, capitalised and won games themselves.
They don't want to win.
No one in this competition wants to win, apparently.
Nope.
Look, it's 3 straight on the trot that they've lost now. Do we have to have the discussion about whether or not this side is a genuine risk of missing finals?
Oh, most definitely. I think we'll get onto the game shortly, but I think Wellington are definitely in with a shout to overtake them and make finals considering the trajectory they're on, whereas Mariners just the complete opposite on the downward spiral, I think. I think the most glaring part is probably defensively. Like, yes, they're not conceding as many goals in games. Like, they're not getting smashed, but at the same time, there's just like 1 or 2 defensive mistakes where you wouldn't see last season. Under Emily Husband, who really prides herself on the defensive side of the ball. So even in the game against Adelaide, it was just sort of like one moment of disconnection. Between the defense, and Adelaide sort of exploited it, right? So, they had more shots against Adelaide, just up front, just couldn't convert, right? And it's when the defense isn't on for the Mariners, then obviously they're going to really struggle because it was the same last season, right? Where defensively they kept a lot of clean sheets. I believe they were probably the second best in terms of defensive record in the league, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of goals conceded. But this season, like, you can have that same emphasis, but if you're not scoring goals and being clinical in front of goal, then it sort of counts for nothing, right? Eventually, that's going to dry up and you're going to be starting losing games. So I think that's where it's adding up for them at the moment. They sit in 6th, like you said. I think the Phoenix they're a real shout to really make the top 6, considering, the form that they've showed.
Yeah, I mean, look, we spoke last week with the Mariners, Canberra directly below them, but that goal differential between the two sides with Canberra's loss is now up to 8. So it really is as good as an extra win. But, I mean, the Mariners still have to find a way to get some points because, Wellington 2, Western Sydney Wanderers 1, Bronte True in the 22nd minute At which point I posted on Blue Sky words to the effect of like, "Does anyone in the hunt for a final spot actually want to win in this competition?" And then Wellington decided, "Yes, we want to. We finally we want to win." Mibe Tanaka in the 75th minute with an absolute banger of a goal. Olivia Ferguson sealed it in the 86th minute. It was Mibe Tanaka's first A-League's goal. So if you remember back to round one, she thought that she had the opening goal of the season, but it was changed to a Sasha Grove own goal in that loss to Western United. And now had to wait over 4 months to actually get her first goal, Burke, but she made it count.
Yeah, it was just a really, really well hit goal. It didn't look like, because I did watch this game live in full. It didn't look like that particular moment was gonna end up being the one that they scored from, but Tanaka had a very different idea than what I thought was gonna happen there. Yeah, took her opportunity and absolutely made it count. I remember we had a listener question, was it last week or the week before, about her inclusion or lack thereof. Whoever that person was that asked that, whose name I cannot remember right now, you were right in that she should be included in more squads. I'm also of that opinion, but she should be on the pitch because shockingly, when she's on the pitch, good things happen for Wellington. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought indeed? Well, Almost Clutch did. Our fantastic listener from Las Vegas, Nevada. Um, Wellington now 23 goals for, 23 goals against, so perfectly even goal differential. Just 1 point back of Canberra and Central Coast Christian. Look, if there's any side outside of the current top six that was going to make a genuine run of it, Wellington seemed the best place to do so. But I mean, they've been inconsistent all season. I think it was, what is it, 7 wins, 2 draws, 9 losses. Some of those draws that turned into losses probably might have come back to haunt them, or some of those draws they couldn't quite turn into wins. But we look at their run home, away to Sydney, home versus the Mariners, home versus City, away to Canberra, home versus Western United. Look, those games against Canberra and Central Coast Mariners stick out like a sore thumb. The two sides directly above them. We're really getting into the six pointer end of the season. Look, I'm going to go on the record now and say that we're 5 weeks ago Wellington make finals.
You reckon? Yeah,
I do.
I think.
I think they do.
Yeah, I do as
I
well. I
hope they do.
think. Yeah, I mean that first game coming up against Sydney, pencil in that automatic 3 points. So that's a good confidence booster for back-to-back wins. Burke's loving it. Burke's loving the little dig at Sydney. And then Central Coast is massive, like in terms of that 6 pointer, like you said, at home as well. Got the advantage there, and then also they've got home games against City and Western United. So those could potentially be points up for grabs as well for them, not out of the realms of possibility. So. Yeah, I'm just impressed of how Paul Temple's been able to stabilise his side, right? Because we know at the start of the season they did have a couple of issues coming in. Their form over the past 5 or 6 games hasn't been the best. Like you mentioned, Poletti has been a bit inconsistent. But I just look at this middle pack and it's funny to say, but I trust Wellington the most out of those teams competing as we're speaking, as of this minute. So if they can sort of keep up the consistency and the way they've been playing, especially defensively, I think that's given them a real chance in this final stretch of the season. So if I had to stick my neck out on the line, I would definitely say Wellington for sure to scrape into that 6. And I think hopefully they make it because it'd be a good story. I thought they played tremendously well last season as well. Unlucky to miss out, but I think this season if they can scrape through, it'd be a good story.
Yeah. Burke, there was another team that played this game, the Western Sydney Wanderers. Bronte True, as I said, in the 22nd minute to open it. We had this discussion in the group chat. Is this the goalkeeping blunder of the week, or do we have to put the blame on the defender here? I believe it was Maya McCutcheon.
I think, like, whilst it does look very much like a goalkeeping blunder, I think it does have to go to the defender, but also to a lack of communication. because it looked like she was letting the ball through to the keeper who wasn't aware that that was happening. So, yeah, probably not the goalkeeping blunder of the week. Probably.
So we don't have a goalkeeping blunder this week because that was the closest thing we had to a contender. Um, I'm actually quite happy with that. It means it was a relatively decent goalkeeping week. All things considered, in the A League women, Bronte True back on the score sheet again. Um, Burke, it's amazing what happens when the youth players are actually put into a system where they can succeed.
Yeah, crazy stuff. I've actually been really, really impressed with Western Sydney the last couple of weeks. They something has kind of clicked with them. I don't know if it's, what you've said, the utilizing of the youth players that they have, but whatever they're doing, it's working. They should keep doing it. They didn't look in the contest, but they also didn't look out of the contest, if that makes sense. They were there. They're definitely looking a lot better than they looked at the start of the season by far. Um, but yeah, their season's over. So I would say.
Yeah, it would take something resembling a miracle for the Wanderers to make finals from here, but plenty of things to build on, not only for next season, but for their NPL Women's New South Wales season, where some of their young players will now be playing for the Wanderers Academy side. Um, which takes us to my big storyline of the week. The NPL is back. Hooray! My weekends get to be spent watching both A-League women and NPL action. So NPL South Australia and the NPL New South Wales are both one round in. Some very exciting games in NPL New South Wales this week. I was on the call for one of them as UNSW 5 defeated NWS Spirit 2 with a 6-goal second half. If you haven't seen the highlights, go to the Football New South Wales YouTube channel to check those ones out. But for the Wanderers, it wasn't a good start to the season as they went down 5-1 to Manly United at Wanderers Football Park. NPL Queensland, Women's Queensland is 4 rounds in. Round 5 was postponed because of ex-tropical cyclone Alfred. But Burke, go to your neck of the woods. The NPL Women's Victoria is back this week.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular that we should be looking for in round 1?
Well, I actually went to the Community Shield game that they had, which was Boleyn Lions against Heidelberg United, and that ended 4-2, I want to say, to Boleyn, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't know, it was a very long night for me because I came home and then watched the Perth game. Um, but I think, yeah, Heidelberg won the championship, yeah, last season in the final against Preston. Boleyn look very good. A lot of teams I think are quite new look, as in there's been a lot of like player turnover and player movement. Preston Lions are going to be also one to watch. They have been for a while now. But yeah, there'll be heaps of exciting football to see at the NPL Women's Vic. So get around it if you can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Please do. It is, fantastic. I believe most states, if not all of them, stream their games on YouTube now. So plenty of plenty of free football, not behind a paywall or anything like that. So, get around it. Each federation has their own particular channels. So just, do some searching. If I remember to, we'll put links to those in the episode description. Just, to make it a little bit easier. But yeah, there's certainly plenty of good action. And then as the A-League women's season winds down and those contracts expire, a lot of players do make their way back to their respective state league competitions. So plenty of action to tune in, but this is really a good chance to start seeing the next generation of players coming through in these early weeks of the season before the A-League's players return. One of those players coming through, as I go back to UNSW 5 and WS Spirit 2, is Madison Habila. I had a chat with Spirit's, I believe it was technical director, is what he introduced himself at halftime, who told me that their right back, Habila, who started the game, was 14 years old. Yes, you're hearing me right, Burke. She started an NPL women's game at 14 years old, spent last season with their 13 boys program, and started it right back at 14 years old, which made me feel incredibly old as I was trying to prep for the second half. But I think she played about 70 minutes and absolutely did not look out of place at all. So there's a name for the future for all of you to check out, Madison Habilla. If you watch NWS Spirit games this season, Burke, what were you doing at 14 years old?
Nothing at all. I was going to high school.
That was like yesterday for you, wasn't it?
Um,
I
okay.
kid. I kid. Christian, what were you doing at 14 years old?
I was the same. At school, having a dream to play football. That got shattered when I found out I wasn't good enough to play. So this is the next best thing, talking about it, right? And now we set up Round Ball Australian Dub podcasts. And now, we're talking about it. So that's sort of where I'm at, unfortunately. Love to play, but wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I was 14. That was the year after I quit football. So, no chances for me whatsoever. But yeah, so the NPL women's competitions around the country are back. As I said, Queensland already 4 rounds in. We do have one more A-League women game to talk about. Newcastle Jets 1, Sydney FC 0.
I thought you were going to dodge it. I thought you were going to just completely sweep it under the carpet.
No. Look, I fully intended to take my big storyline third, like I always do, but then, you both just kept on throwing me into the other games with perfect transitions, so I figured I may as well just keep it up.
Okay.
Sheridan Gallagher scored in the 42nd minute. Yes, sure, indeed. Gallagher also copped a yellow card in the 22nd, her 8th yellow card of the season, which results in her second 1-game suspension for yellow card accumulation to go along with her red card suspension from earlier in the year. I mean, this was your stereotypical Sheridan Gallagher performance, wasn't it, Burke?
It really was. Sheridan Gallagher, more like Sheridan Gallagher, which is what I posted on the apps when the goal happened. It was kind of an unassuming goal as well. Like it just kind of popped up out of nowhere. But it is fun to watch Sheridan Gallagher play because you do know that she's just gonna run people over. And it's not even that she does it illegally, it's just that playing the other type of football that she plays, that's kind of the whole game. And
Her
that
physical
skill is
presence is
actually,
scary.
yeah, it's quite transferable, actually. So it does make me laugh seeing that happen to very unaware players of Gallagher's, prowess as a physical player. She's very good though. I just wish she wouldn't cop so many yellow cards. Eight is eight is crazy work, absolutely crazy work.
Yeah, I mean, 8 in, what have we got this year? 23-game season, but it's not even 23 games, it's like 18 games or something like that. It is absolutely insane, just the numbers that she is putting up. And, but I mean, this is the player that she's always been. She's always had that very physical presence. She's always been very aggressive, and I know that we were shocked when we realised that it was her first red card earlier this season. And even then, it wasn't a direct red card, even though it probably should have been. Just absolutely insane. But Christian, I mean, Gallagher wasn't fit coming into this game. She had illness this week. Ryan Campbell said after the game she only trained once this week and produced a shift for the team. He thought that she was only going to last 30 minutes. She got through 45. Great effort, and she was rewarded with a goal for it, which gave Newcastle the win.
I'm just laughing because what does that say about Sydney FC? That they just made a score. Like, she wasn't even 100% and she's still getting on the score sheet. Like, that just sort of sums up Sydney's season, I guess. But yeah, she always seems to be at the right place at the right time, and this is no exception, right? Like I said before, just a really good physical presence up front to really link up play. And she's really that focal point now, isn't she, for the Jets? Like when she is 100% fit, obviously she can provide a lot more. They had no choice but to give her limited minutes, which is obviously understandable given her situation. But yeah, it's sort of like what could have been for the Jets this season. I mean, I think there is definitely a lot of potential in there that sort of hasn't been tapped into, because we saw last season, right? I know like Serena Bolden, for example, was there, and that obviously helped a heap. But they've still got, some talent in their squad. It just hasn't sort of come together throughout, consistently game in, game out. So yeah, probably a slight disappointment there, but to get a win against Sydney at home, it's no real impressive feat given, the Sky Blues and the form they've showed. Sorry to have another dig, Poletti. That's my last one for the pod, I promise. I won't go there anymore, but yeah, that's sort of my 2 cents on it.
I gave up on Sydney season a long time ago. I'm fine, honestly. But I mean, Burke, Brian Campbell after the game also said, they looked at themselves in the international break and they focused on trying to be more compact and not giving away as many chances. When he was asked about, the side's turn in form, 2-1 win against the Glory last week, 1-0 win against Sydney this week. Red card in that game last week, but 2 wins on the trot. I know the international break isn't necessarily always the be-all, end-all, but it seems that it might have helped the Jets out, given that, they've performed well against sides who are directly comparable to them on the ladder.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. The Jets are funny. I think this is the first time in this season that they've gone 2 wins in a row, which they, yeah, took their time to do that. But they have very good quality players. It looks like he said in that quote, that they've just taken the time to kind of reset themselves, and refocus on what they actually want to achieve, and it seems to be working, and I hope it continues for them.
Yeah, good end of the season. Could see, a lot of things turn around in season 2025-26. On the Sydney FC side of things, Beth Mason-Jones came off with an injury in the second half. We saw Jasmine Black get her first A-League's minutes. She's been around the side for a couple of years now, I believe. Off the top of my head, soon I've heard her finally take the pitch. Good for her. I've watched her at NPL Women's. She's a decent goalkeeper. But I mean, I don't know. For me, I think this chance probably should have come a lot earlier. As we've talked about, goalkeeping has not been Sydney FC's problem this season. I would, based on the way Ante Juric has played his sides this season, I'd expect Jasmine Black, if Mason Jones isn't fit, to start this week against Wellington. We'll have to see what happens there. Look, Sydney FC technically not mathematically eliminated yet, but so I don't even think with a loss this week they'd be mathematically eliminated. But it is coming, and I'm sure everyone else around the league will rejoice, including Burke. But yeah, look, I really don't have a lot to say on Sydney FC in this game. As another 1-0 loss, just sort of sums up Sydney's season, I guess, would be the best way to put it. We'll go ahead to having a look at round 19. The Mariners and Perth on Friday night, Western United and Canberra on Friday night. Both those games kicking off at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. The Wanderers and Melbourne Victory kick off at 4:40 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time at the Western Sydney Stadium. That game part of a double header. Sydney and Wellington kick off at 5 p.m. at Leichhardt Oval. That game not part of a double header, but was originally scheduled to be part of a double header. Melbourne City and Adelaide at 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time out at Casey Fields. Let's hope it's not another hot one in Melbourne, because that is another venue we know doesn't have adequate lighting for broadcast, and so a delay would very much be not on the cards there. And Brisbane and Newcastle currently scheduled to go ahead at 6:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time on Saturday, 5:30 p.m. local time, which takes us into a listener question from One Ishii on Blue Sky. The Royal Women are supposed to be hosting a game this Sunday. Is Perry Park still underwater? Based on the fact that the Brisbane Roar Melbourne City game has already been rescheduled and a date announced, I'm going to say no, it's not. And that will be suitable for Brisbane and Newcastle on Sunday afternoon. But as always, keep an eye on socials and everything like that. I believe it was around the time that we dropped the episode last week that the A-League's announced that the Melbourne City game was postponed. So I'd imagine if it is going to be postponed or delayed in any way, that the announcement would come again, possibly by the time you listen to this episode. But of those 6 games, Burke, which one are you most looking forward to this week?
Probably got to be City versus Adelaide, which I've just checked the bomb about regarding the weather. It's meant to be 28, so
Not
it'll
bad, but
it'll
not
be hot.
great by any stretch of the imagination.
It'll be hot
Yeah.
at Control Delete Fields. It will be hot there. But I think it'll be a good game between the two sides because they're, yeah, both playing really good football. It'll be interesting to see if City end up conceding first like they are known to do this season. But yeah, I think it'll be a good game between the two.
Christian, which game are you most looking forward to?
Why do you hate me, Burke? You've stolen mine again. It's City and Adelaide. I was looking like Burke's gonna say City Adelaide because it's the one that stands out, right? If I say another game, I'd be lying. This is the one that's gonna grab the most attention. I want to see how Adelaide stack up against the City side and where they are as of now. In terms of a real challenger, not for the title because I think City probably have it wrapped up. Unless Victory make a sort of a late charge and a near flawless. I just want to see Adelaide put in a real performance to see where the bar's set and if they can compete with them if in finals if they cross paths.
Melbourne City going for 19 straight games undefeated, which I believe would put them outright top of the A-League women ladder in terms of most games undefeated in a row. For me, the game that stands out the most is Sydney FC versus Wellington Phoenix. I want to see if Wellington can back it up after a win against the Wanderers. Do it 2 weeks in a row and actually put themselves into a final spot. Because I think if Wellington make it into a final spot this week, I don't think they're going to fall out. I think it's very much going to be this would be the week that Wellington seal their finals berth, even though obviously mathematically they can't. But I think once they get in, I don't think they're going out. So I'm very much looking forward to that one. Go to another listener question now from Kevin Sangster, also on Blue Sky. Thoughts on Olivia Sakini being recalled to Racing Louisville, her NWSL club? Look, for me, her season-ending injury, I'm surprised that it's taken this long post-injury for her to be recalled. She's played her last game for the Roar this season, Burke, but I mean, to be fair, we already thought that she'd already played her last game for the Roar this season.
Yeah, I don't know why we weren't immediately checking Skyscanner for flights for her because there's no reason, no need for her to stick around. No, Louisville have really good facilities actually. Now that I'm thinking about the club, so yeah, I can imagine wanting to go home because she is American and be surrounded by her family and her, support system to go through the rehab and all that for the injury. Because have they said what it was? I don't think they have. But it's, yeah, definitely a season ender. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all to hear that she's going back. I'd be surprised actually to find that she wasn't already back and they were just announcing it now. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look, I definitely think that is a possibility. I don't believe the official injury diagnosis has been given. But yeah, no surprises at all that she's gone back to her parent club, Racing Louisville. Once home of Alex Chidiac, who I don't think was ever given a fair chance at that club, which is a shame. But we move on to our final piece of news this afternoon, or on this episode of the Dubcast. Alex Aparkas and Michael Cooper will take charge of the under-20s and under-17s women's national teams, respectively. So 2 of the 3 vacancies for the national teams, Burke, have been filled up. Michael Cooper, Football South Australia as a coach and technical director from 2022 to 25, and has also been an assistant coach with the under-17s men's side from 2019 to 2025, so well experienced in youth football. I've gone overseas many times and qualified for Asian Cups, and working with the likes of Trevor Morgan and Brad Maloney, I've learnt a lot about the realities of Asian football, and hopefully I can bring that back to ensure that we qualify as well. He also noted that it would be great to qualify for the Women's World Cup at U17 level. The program's ultimate goal is to develop as many players as possible to play for the Matildas. Success is making sure that those players have the skills, the mindset, and physical capabilities to perform at the highest level for the national side. While Alex Apakis, actually, before I go on to Alex Apakis, just Michael Cooper. Look, I'm not going to pretend like I know a lot about Michael Cooper Burke, but on the surface, it seems like a very good appointment.
Yeah, I did like that in the announcement, that quote that you just read, that it's about focusing on the overall, and that it's a development program. It's not the be all and end all, and they're looking to the future. I felt that was very nice to see. It's not a case of, we're just focusing on this tournament. We're just like, I'm just here for this tournament. They're looking to the future, which is very good to hear.
Yep, and then Alex Apakis, appointed coach of the Young Matildas, the under 20s, was most recently the Glory A League women's coach from 2020 to 2024. He's done a bit of work for Football New South Wales since departing that role at the end of last season for personal reasons. He's been the technical advisor for girls' youth development and the head coach for the girls' state team um, in recent months. Was previously the head coach and technical director for Sydney Uni's NPL Women's New South Wales program from 2017 to 2020. They were crowned premiers multiple times during his tenure, and they did the double in 2019, also being crowned champions. Quotes from Parkers have always relied on young players through the model of both of those clubs, Glory and Sydney Uni. Youth was a real important part, so I've spent a considerable amount of time putting time and trust into young players and shaping their development. Development for players is never linear. It's never going to be easy, and I think it's a multifaceted approach. The player has to be invested, the coach has to be invested, and I think when you're really clear about what those development goals are, with feedback, with time on the grass, and with reviewing, I think ultimately that relationship towards the ultimate goal, development, can really happen and take place. Christian, all the right things being said from Alex Parkers. We know that he's a very good coach. Didn't always have It wasn't always set up for success at the Perth Glory. It still took them close to finals a couple of times. I think of the COVID impacted seasons. They spent a lot of time in New South Wales, barely missing finals during that time period. And overall, I actually really like this appointment.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, it's all about the youth development, right, and what he can get the best out of the squad, right. So, I mean, so the proof's going to be in the pudding after 12 months, 24 months, whether that youth side of things, if it has improved, right, the technical side of it. And I think a review will come into play. I don't know when it will be, maybe like I said, 12 months in to his tenure. They can sit back and say, okay, is this and this been improved? Is this what we're trying to get out of the program under his tenureship? So I think it's a good appointment. Obviously, he's been, like I said, a couple of different places already to gain that experience. Like youth level is definitely different. Don't get me wrong, at national team level, because there is, I guess, a lot of expectation because this is the future of the Matildas, right? These are the players which want to break through into the first team, and all eyes are on them, right? It might not be all eyes on them in a sense that the general public focus on like the Matildas are, right? Because they're obviously the number one team in Australia at the moment. But in terms of the youth coming through, this is an important phase, right? Because for the Matildas, you've got this older generation filtering out, and we need these young players to really start, I guess, developing and producing good football, right? And it's not all about results, and it's been the same as I've said for the Ollie Roos. It's about the actual performances on the pitch, which should be judged more as opposed to just results, because you can get a 1-0 win and you'd be like, oh yeah, it's a great win, but in terms of the football being played, what are we actually doing in terms of the program to develop and take that next step? So that's definitely what I'll be looking out for.
Burke, your thoughts on Parkers?
Yeah, I really liked him during his time with Perth. I think I've actually met and spoken with him before, a couple of years ago. He's Yeah, he genuinely seems to care about his players. He definitely has a huge focus on youth and young players. You saw that because he'd give his young players multi-year contracts. This was like in 2022, 2021, 2022, around then. So he definitely has a passion for developing young players and he respects them greatly, which I think is really great to see him be rewarded with this kind of appointment. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how we go. Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't the only announcement that was made with those appointments. That Football Australia also announced a team of coaches initiative. It's designed to develop the next generation of high performance football coaches by providing hands on experience in national team environments, training camps, and tournament environments, with the coaches still maintaining their club commitments. The inaugural cohort is four names: Melissa Barbieri, Kath Connolly, M. Husband, and Kat Smith. Football Australia's head of national teams, Gary Moretti, said that the appointments and team of coaches initiative reinforced the governing body's commitment to building a seamless pathway from the youth team to the Matildas side. Look, Melissa Barbieri has been involved in coaching for a while. She's still assistant coach or goalkeeping coach, her current role, Burke with City, in
I
addition to
think
playing
it's
backup keeper.
assistant. She's player coach, assistant coach. Yeah.
Yep. So she's fulfilling multiple roles with Melbourne City's A-League women's side. Kath Connolly, previously coach of the Wanderers, spent a while as an assistant, is now doing a lot of broadcasting work as well. M. Husband, Kat Smith, current coaches in the A-League women. Um, Husband, I believe, essentially succeeded Aparcus at Sydney Uni. If I've got my timelines correct off the top of my head, and Kat Smith, previous coach of the Wanderers, now coach of Western United. I mean, look, clearly these are four incredibly talented people, Burke, in their respective coaching roles and commitments. To be able to get that hands-on experience. So, if this is truly indeed the next generation of high-performance coaches, as worded in the press release, that they're going to be given the experience to succeed.
Yeah, and I think they are. I hope they are. I really want to see more women coaching, and obviously it's great to have Kat Smith and M Husband as head coaches in the league. I would love to see them get a national team gig, whether it's for the Senior Matildas or elsewhere. I don't mind. I'd like to see it. And I do kind of wish some like these coaching appointments had been given to women, but I do understand that people like M Husband and Kat Smith already have gigs in the league, and those are also very important roles to have women in as well. But I think this initiative is a good step forward for development and for, yeah, hopefully progressing down the pipeline towards a national team coaching gig for any of them.
Look, Christian, as Parker said, development for players is never linear, but it's also never linear for coaches. I mean, Barbieri, Cannoli, Husband, Smith, if you were to pick one of those names to get a coaching role with a national side first, which one of those names would you pick?
Ooh, tough question. I'd probably go with Kat Smith because I believe she's been in the national team setup. I don't think she's been coached, but she's been in and around sort of the youth development. She's had some sort of role. I just can't, off the top of my head, think of what exactly it was, but she's got a lot of experience in that field and obviously coached the Wanderers and now Western United. She's very familiar with Australian football and she's been through the coaching setup, right? So I think she'd be primed and I'd probably have her as the top candidate. Catherine Cannully's done a lot of academy work as well, I believe, as of now, alongside the commentary work, as you touched on. So, yeah, there'd be a few good candidates. I mean, Barbieri is another one, but I think she'd need a bit more time. She's still playing, like it's hard to believe, but give her a bit more time to earn her coaching badges, and I'm sure she'll definitely be another candidate for the future. But I think it's just great in general that we do have a lot of options to choose from, and we're not just pushing these so-called legends to the side and really embracing them in this new chapter, right? I mean, that's what you want. I think, for the Socceroos, that's sort of been one of the criticisms where we haven't brought on board some of those legends onto the board, or whether it be coaching, etc. I think the women's game does that very well, where they bring on these ex-former players and bring them into the coaching scene and help in that next phase of development, which is great.
Burke, I mean, I'd be inclined to say, Melissa Barbieri would probably be the first, just because I can't imagine Husband and Smith leaving their sides anytime soon. But I mean, to be fair, Barbieri could still play for the next 2 years before, before she gets a chance to, do anything. I mean, so like it really is just a testament to how long her career has been.
Yeah, and what a career it's been for Bubs. I think it'd be so sick to have her end up coaching the Matildas. It'd be a great sort of full circle, great story. Having her go from captaining the team to being the head coach. Um, so yeah, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see any of them, honestly, getting a getting a go when they feel they're ready for it and when they're ready to, you know, move from coaching in the A leagues.
Yeah, no, and it's certainly a journey that will be front and center too with all of these names. But that will do for this episode of the Dubcast, part of the Roundball Australia podcast network. Burke, thank you once again for joining me,
Thank you for having me.
and Christian, thank you for coming back.
Thanks, Poletti. Anytime. I'll definitely make sure to make another appearance next week for sure.
We'll be back next week on Wednesday, same as always. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.